Hi friends, my name is host Eric. I'm the host of Talking with Famous People, and today I want to discuss a term that's a very simple term that we all, including me, forget the origins of. And that term is operate. Let's operate. So, the thing is, we all are familiar with this term most naturally, as something that doctors do on you at the hospital when they perform surgery. They have to operate, right? In fact, there was a game when I was a kid called Operation. I guess it still exists, where you pull out the organs of the person and try to touch the sides. So, what does it mean to operate, though? Well, first and foremost, it means to put into action knowledge. So, to operate on you at the hospital or to perform surgery is to operationalize the knowledge the doctor has of medicine. When the doctor takes out your appendix by cutting open your stomach and reaching in there with a little pair of grabbers and grabbing it and pulling it out, he has operationalized his definition of necessary. In other words, because he knows it's not necessary for you to have an appendix to survive, and because he knows that your current appendix is not in a good shape, he has operationalized those pieces of knowledge to take action. Namely, to cut you open and take your appendix out. Operations happen everywhere, every day, all the time. And we always forget to ask the question, including me, for sure, what is this operation operationalizing? It's always something. If you have a undercover CIA op, the CIA has operationalized their intelligence information. They have received intelligence that these bad guys are hiding there or something or whatever, and they send their team to neutralize that. They've operationalized their intelligence information. And when you look at a soap opera, well, that's like an opera on the play where they sing kind of opera, is probably not derived from the same word, but you could still think of it in terms of operationalizing. An opera operationalizes the vision of the opera writer. A soap opera is performing operations to sell soap originally, but ultimately to keep people entertained. You're operationalizing your understanding of what your audience wants by making more episodes of your soap opera. So you could call it audience pleasuring operation is what any show is, what Talking with Famous People is, really. Except the problem with operation as a term is that it does imply that you have to know that you have to be doing things for certain reasons, right? Like, I am operationalizing my desire to be socially engaged with people when I live stream or upload videos or whatever. But operationalizing a desire doesn't really make any sense, because an operation is something that is planned. In other words, we have as a standard default the idea that before an operation is conducted, it goes from vision through language to action. I've got received intelligence information. I'm the director of the CIA. I have a vision. I convey that vision through language into ordinated steps or instructions that then convert that vision into operationalized action. When I make shit for the channel, I'm not really operationalizing anything, because there's no planning, there's no explicit reasoning behind what I'm doing. However, within any video, I'm doing something else. So let's look at the next number. There's only 3 numbers. Acting. Genius. Thank you. I am taking action in these videos, but usually I'm not operating if it's in a live stream per se, for sure. In this video, I am operating because I had a vision about the word operation. I have a plan, 1, 2, 3, let's operate, acting, and the more you know. And I'm implementing that according to what? Well, see, this is where this gets incredibly revelatory. The reason people struggle a lot with my approach to things, if they do, is because they don't see word making as a form of action. But we do recognize that it is. So much so that in order to make clear that something was happening, I guess, they call saying words out loud for the purpose of saying words out loud acting. Isn't that weird? They call it acting. Why would you call that acting? Well, they're taking action with words to tell a story. But it's not the same kind of action as punching a door or something. So, nevertheless, it does have impacts. Now, we can recognize that people standing on a stage, performing a play, are taking action, even if we want to evaluate action purely in terms of its impacts, because we recognize that people sitting in the audience are impacted by the play. We have a little bit more trouble, some of us, not everyone, not me, but some people do, have more trouble understanding that talking is a form of action when instead of trying to engage an audience emotionally, I'm trying to engage them intellectually. But it's nevertheless still a form of action and can still be either impactful in good ways or not impactful. So if I do a poor job of acting in an emotional play, you won't feel emotionally resonant with it. But it's also the case that even if I am the most genius actor in the world, if you don't like this play, you've got the play is about a young gay man from Chicago, and you've got a bunch of what do you call it, like chips on your shoulder / insecurities / issues regarding that sort of thing. It doesn't matter how genius the actor is, you're going to be sitting in your chair thinking about political matters, or thinking about whether you should come out of the closet, or thinking about, whatever. So in that case, it's not possible for the best of all actors in the world to use language to guarantee an impact on someone. And this is the fundamental difference between language as a form of action and regular action as a form of action. Whereas in regular action, you take action, that you took action can be determined by that you had impact. Whereas when you act with words, you cannot make that kind of determination. Instead, you can simply say, I said them, there they are, and then they have to subsist on their own as an object independent of the creator. So here's the deal. The more you know. We'll get to the end of this thing here, and so it doesn't go on for too long. Is this a knowing thing? No, it's not actually a knowing thing. Because what's important to remember is that action types, whether they have it in the first or second slot, that's NE first or second, or SE first or second, have as their other approach to the world a deliberation function. And it's necessarily the case they have a deliberation function because if I'm going to be taking action with, say, extroverted intuition, like I just finished saying before, unlike that impactful kinds of physical world action, language action, there's no way of knowing or feeling any sense of satisfaction about statuses regarding it by measuring impacts. Instead, we establish significance in one of two different ways. Either we say these word objects stand alone successfully, such that when people try to negate them, they either don't actually negate, them. In other words, they're just attacking it, but they're not. The reasoning they present isn't responsive or determinate on the matter, or that the honest people who come in to evaluate the legitimacy of something with a negationary adversarial approach, which is the best and only way to really evaluate it, end up being sold by it. And instead of end up adversaries go, no, actually I did my thorough parsing of it and it's actually correct. He's right. Actually right about his shit. So knowers though, if you have knowledge in your first or second slot, you have interface as your other function. Now, that does not mean that knowers are inherently wrong about typology or wrong about this, wrong about that. But if you try to use only knowledge in typology, that's what it means if you get rid of operationalizing anything. So when I say we need to operationalize our definitions, what I'm really saying is we need to use our knowledge of language. Now that we know, we can use it to do something purposeful. And since it's all language-based stuff, the purposeful thing that is done is to generate a language object that's more like the one I just described. That's very durable, very resistant towards legitimate critique, and attractive to those who would attempt to do legitimate critique. That I come in to rip this thing apart and walk away going, hey, you know what? My bad. That thing is fucking tight. You know? We have some criteria to evaluate. In other words, whether I've successfully operationalized definitions or not. When I operationalize the definition by saying, well, a person who has expert intuition will produce X data to Y prompt, that's a good thing. Because I'm not just telling you that, we don't really need an appendix. And I'm not just telling you, your appendix is down there somewhere where the pain is, so it might be linked. And I'm not even just telling you, if we don't take your appendix out, you will die. I'm telling you, because we know that your bursting appendix will kill you if left untreated, and because we know that we can safely remove your appendix without killing you, we will operationalize those pieces of knowledge to save your life. Crazily, insanely, unbelievably, in the typology community, we apparently have moved away from the notion that it's ever okay to use what we know to do anything. So if I've defined a term in such a way that you don't pass that test, you don't meet those criteria, and you can no longer claim that you're an ENTP except within a totally walled garden subjective frame where nothing's ever operationalized, then we've done everything in our power to make MBTI, cognitive functions typology, worthy of the contempt that the mainstream academic community has for it. So if you're one of the people who thinks operating, everybody's using big words for just word salad. No, remember this. If you think it's okay to perform surgery on people, then you're in favor of operationalizing knowledge. And I know both about definitions, language, etc., in ways that are distinct from what's being said. In other words, I know how arguments and language work, replacing the words with variables, A, B, C, D, whatever. I understand and have a huge set of knowledge about how to use language to do other things. It has its own mechanics. So in other words, I don't have to be an expert on spears to know that spears can be used as a weapon. right? But the point is, if I want to talk exactly about why a spear is preferable to, say, a boomerang in context meow, then I'm going to need to have a little bit more expertise about spears, right? And about boomerangs, and about the situation. And so it is the case as well with cognitive functions. It is true, we can simply talk about typology in terms of naming things. I name myself a spear. And, if we have people who have no real expertise in the matter, most people go, well, you look kind of spear-like, I guess. You guess you would call that a spear. And then you get some Middle Ages weapons expert and goes, you're clearly a halberd. And they go, no, I'm a spear. I use my pointy part to spear things. That makes me a spear regardless. Okay, so that's what we got going on in cognitive functions, right? Unlike the weapons question, where you say, how can we test this to see if it's a spear or a halberd? Well, that's a lot harder to do because names for objects like that are more arbitrary than the kind of language, the precise language work that we do with cognitive functions. But how do we operationalize extroverted intuition or introverted thinking or introverted sensing or increasingly introverted intuition? Well, we ask these questions. And it turns out, if you can set this stuff up ungameably, as I have, more or less, if you can find put it this way, you got to find the ungameable bit, the ungameable link, which is a skill of some sort. Cognitive functions are not skills, but certain skills-ish tests they are the only thing in typology that meaningfully tell us anything about people, really, and in psychology in general. It is the case that some people can answer deductive reasoning questions like bah, 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 bah. And it is the case that some people, like an ESFP I typed the other day, were they an ENFJ? I don't remember what they ended up being, but they went like this. Okay, your mother's sister's kid. Okay. So your mother is your mother, and sister's your great aunt, and really thought so hard about it before finally coming up with the wrong answer. Now, there's only two choices we have. Either that person's retarded, or we're not thinking conventionally about attention and intelligence correctly. And it's obviously the latter answer, right? There's nothing wrong with that person. It's just their strengths require the payment of that weakness. And the only reason it seems like a weakness to people in ways that are distinct from, say, my weakness is because it's unusually well testable. In other words, the skill that functions as a concrete, ungameable link to the function has a stronger linkage. So, if you don't want to operationalize your definitions, then you better be, as far as I'm concerned, a Jehovah's Witness. You better also not operationalize your medical knowledge. Or else, in my mind, you're just being a spoil sport. You're spoiling the amazing, delightful sport of getting it right. You're spoiling it with trying to know and insisting you can only know things that can additionally be parsed. And you're insisting that no matter how much Eric knows about language, he can never use that knowledge to do anything with language or about language. And that is, nobody would agree with any of those statements. So if you really feel that way, then you just hate me. And that's why you say those things. Which is fine. That's a perfectly good reason to. But say that's your reason.